Hi, this is David from Shale Creek, and some people have expressed some interest in how I do some of my watering for both drip tape and for my blackberry. So I'm going to show you that. I do use what's behind me here is a little setup with a certain type of pump, and what I have to do is my pH of my well water is about 8.3. So what I have to do is I have to adjust it with an acid. So I need to have a pump that can suck up that acid at a certain ratio and inject it directly into my feeder. Now I can also use the same pump and the same tank here to put in fertilizers, but I want to show you kind of what the setup was as far as just the PVC and kind of explain some things so you see what's going on. All right, so this is a pump. So I'm getting my well water unfiltered coming up from the ground here, and I use PVC because I'm taking it from a good 300 feet away. I have to go through a filter. This filter is about 200 mesh. Now I isolate this in case I ever have to pull this off. So you see a valve on top and bottom that just shuts off the system. I also put, this is what's called a union. This just unscrews. And what I can do is there's a union there and there's a union here. And then these two are unions as well. I can basically take off the entire pump in the wintertime, go store it in my basement, and not worry about this shattering and freezing. This is a pretty expensive pump. This one happens to be a Mixrite. It's kind of top end. It gives me about 11 gallons a minute. This is a Kynar pump, so I can actually inject nitric acid directly or sulfuric acid directly, so it's kind of high end. So after the filter, now I've got a way to go. I can go directly into my pump, this direction. I can also bypass it. This one happens to have, this pump has a bypass as well, so I could use that. But if I ever had to take the pump out and replace it, I can shut off this bottom valve, this one here, take out the pump, and still have water to whatever I need. Okay, from here, now I happen to use Rainbird. This is a 4-channel system. I may want to expand this to an 8 or 12. There are other brands on the market, but it makes it really simple. This I can program for times, just like you water a lawn at a home. I can program for times and how long it's going to water for. And all this basically does, it's just a timer. And what it does is it opens a control valve. That control valve, you know, if I've already got this open, it's closed at the second, will open up, and whatever it's connected to for an allotted number of minutes, and away it goes. And there are obviously different brands of controllers. Now these guys can also be manually overridden. There's a switch in here. All I have to do is turn it and it opens the valve up. It's nice to have something you can shut off with a valve ahead of time. It's not really necessary. I didn't do it on these two setups, which is for my row crops. And from here, I go underground, and that's kind of nice. It runs along the side of my greenhouse and into my greenhouse. And I wanted to show you some of the fittings that go to this. So I've laid these out. Now, for drip tape, as you see here, you're going to need a pressure reducer. So you can buy these, and just be aware, you know, different drip tapes. I happen to like emitters on drip tape that are about every 4 inches. So that means that you can see the drips coming down. An emitter drips out water. That emitter is every 4 inches all along the entire length. This one happens to be 0.8 gallons a minute. 0.8 gallons a minute, so not quite a per 100 feet of drip line. Now this high tunnel is about 100 feet long. I've got 8 of these, so that's 8 times 0.8. And that's how many gallons per minute I'm going to be getting. Just be aware of that, because this has a gallon per minute rating as well, and you want to make sure that you size this appropriately. This is just a pressure reducer, and that is going down. This one happens to be 15 psi. So most drip tape is like 10 psi. Can handle this. So from here, this can be installed near the pump. I happen to have mine, if you can see back in this corner over here. This is for all of my drip tape. From here, you have a couple choices. Since I'm using PVC, what I'm going to do is I can do 2 different things. I can either screw in a 1/2 inch, so these are 3/4 to 1/2 inch, and I have a 1/2 inch to a valve. These are really cheap. It's a good way to go. They run about $1.25, $1.50, and then from here it goes to the drip hose fitting. You can also install a regular valve. Now these are about $8 a pop. I'd probably recommend going cheaper. And then you can get a 3/4 fitting to a drip tape fitting. All right, so now that's for PVC. If you wanted to do a hard, a black plastic, then these types of barbs would basically get punched in there and you screw it in and it holds tight, and this goes to drip tape. So this is another option. This is a valve as well. Okay, so this is that valve I was talking about. There's another one here, and I can put this at the very end. So at the very end down there, let's say I'm suspecting I've got some garbage plugging up my emitters, or somehow I got some dirt in here and I want to get it out of the line. I can just put one of these at the very end and open it up and just let it out. The other option is something like this. This one has a pressure sensor basically in here. When it's over about 5 psi, this shuts. So let's say now I've been watering and I turn my system off. It starts to, all the drip tape, of course, relieves the pressure, and then this opens up and it bleeds out. So if this was a downhill situation, the entire line would then drain out through this end here. Another option is just a straight plug. This is where the drip tape would go in. You could put a staple through here to the ground, and that would just hold the drip tape. And if, for God's sake, you happen to bust a tape, this is kind of a union. You can put it in between to fix a splice. So I've spliced these before where I've used a razor blade cutting through plastic, and lo and behold, I've had to replace it. All right, so those are the basic fittings. I would suggest, I like PVC for some projects. So my most recent project here, we're putting in 620-foot lines in here. And I basically ran PVC underground. This is a union on this one. This is what they call a true union valve. It has a union on both sides. Pressure reducer, another union. So basically I can tear this whole thing apart, shut it off, tear it all apart, and go store all this line in my barn. So anywhere you have, I've got a 10-15 foot section here, I've got a union, and that union can be taken apart. And all this is going to be taken apart as well. So like I described, at the very end there, those are pressure relief valves. Go ahead, it just rained, so it's all muddy right now. And since this is a downhill slope a little bit, I've actually put a pressure reducer here. I've left a valve here because I may take that off someday. And I'm thinking I may extend it a little bit off into this direction, and I may go another 30 feet maybe next year. We'll just see how this year's market garden grows. And basically that's my setup. A lot of modifications you can do. The drip tape is just amazing. It's very easy and cheap. It might last you 2 years. It really depends on how well you filter and the kind of minerals that you've got on here. When you do install these, the drip tape, you want to make sure that the emitters are on the upside, not flipped over. Because what will happen here is this will bleed over basically and just drip out. If you let it hit the soil, you have a higher chance of deposits actually coming in here. So that this top section would sit up against your plastic. So that's kind of the basics of drip tape. Whether you go PVC or whether you put plastic in here, that's up to you. The difficulty with putting PVC is obviously I can't drive a tractor down here. I just cracked this pipe. I'd have to disassemble all these connections. If I did have black pipe in here or a flex pipe of some sort, I could just drive this entire row with my tractor and not have an issue at all. I have to surround this with wire because of my cattle, so I'm not driving a tractor through here anyway. This is all going to be done manually, and that's got to come up afterward. So I hope you've kind of enjoyed this, maybe learned something. If you have any questions, feel free. I know a lot of you are much more experienced at this than I am. You might want to just add to this, and I'd appreciate that. All right, take care, y'all.